They say you never really know someone until money or betrayal is involved. At 72 years old, I discovered I didn't know either my husband of 48 years or my own sister. What I found in that manila folder my accountant handed me wasn't just numbers. It was evidence that the two people I trusted most had been systematically stealing from me for 6 years while planning a future together. 6 years. While I worked 16-hour days building my interior design business into something worth $2.3 million, they were siphoning it away dollar by dollar and planning their escape to Costa Rica with my money. But here's what they didn't count on. I didn't get to 72 by being fragile. I didn't build a multi-million-dollar business by accepting defeat, and I certainly didn't survive raising 3 children and running a company through 2 recessions by being anyone's fool. My name is Barbara Thornton, and this is the story of how I discovered the ultimate betrayal and how I made sure they paid for every single dollar, every single lie, and every single moment they thought I was too old, too trusting, or too naive to fight back. Before we begin, I want to know, where are you watching from today? Are you in Texas, California, maybe somewhere with your morning coffee like I had mine on the day everything changed? Drop a comment below. I love hearing from you, and after you hear what I'm about to tell you, I think you'll understand why connecting with all of you means so much to me now. This story begins in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I'd lived for 35 years. Picture this. May 2019, a Tuesday morning so ordinary I'd made my usual egg white omelet, had my usual green tea, and was reviewing my usual monthly financial reports. I ran Thornton Interiors, a high-end design firm specializing in luxury residential spaces. We'd done homes for professional athletes, tech executives, and old money families throughout Arizona and Nevada. After decades of work, I'd built something I was genuinely proud of. My husband Richard managed the business side while I focused on design and client relations. It seemed like the perfect partnership. He'd been a commercial real estate broker when we met, so numbers were his forte. My sister Diane had joined us 8 years earlier as our operations manager after her own business failed. I'd welcomed her with open arms, grateful to help family and thinking her organizational skills would complement our growth. That Tuesday morning, my 28-year-old accountant, Marcus Chen, asked if he could stop by the house instead of meeting at the office. Something in his voice made my stomach tighten. Marcus was usually cheerful, efficient, always professional, but on the phone that morning he sounded nervous. No, he sounded scared. "Mrs. Thornton," he said when he arrived, clutching a folder against his chest like it might explode. "I need to show you something, and I need you to promise you'll hear me out completely before you react." I poured us both coffee, his with cream and sugar, mine black, and sat down at my kitchen table. The morning sun was streaming through the windows I'd personally designed to catch that exact light. Everything in my home was intentional, carefully chosen, perfectly placed. I had no idea that in the next hour my entire carefully constructed world would detonate. Let me take you back so you understand what was at stake. I started Thornton Interiors in 1994 with $15,000 I'd saved, working 3 jobs while raising our children. Richard was supportive but busy with his own career. I built everything from nothing, knocking on doors, taking jobs other designers wouldn't touch, working weekends and holidays. By 2000, we were profitable. By 2010, we were sought after. By 2015, we were one of the premier design firms in the Southwest. I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you this so you understand. I wasn't some helpless woman who didn't understand business. I knew construction costs, profit margins, vendor negotiations, and client management. But there's a difference between understanding business and suspecting the people you love of systematic theft. Those are entirely different skill sets. Richard and I met in 1971 at Arizona State University. He was studying business. I was in the art program, dreaming of beautiful spaces. We married in 1973, young and idealistic. He was handsome, ambitious, and back then, he seemed to adore me. We had 3 children. Michael in 1974, Jennifer in 1977, and Amy in 1980. Richard climbed the commercial real estate ladder while I juggled motherhood and freelance design work from our garage. Our marriage wasn't perfect. Whose is after 48 years? But I thought we had something solid. We had grandchildren we both loved. We had Sunday dinners together. He still kissed me goodbye every morning, still reached for my hand during movies. Or at least, he did all those things while simultaneously planning his exit strategy. Diane was my younger sister by 4 years. Growing up in Phoenix, we'd been close despite our differences. She was the wild one. 3 marriages, 2 bankruptcies, always jumping from one business idea to another. I was the steady one, the responsible older sister. When her event planning company collapsed in 2011, leaving her with debt and no prospects at 63, I didn't hesitate. Family helps family. I created a position for her, operations manager, overseeing scheduling, vendor relationships, and administrative tasks. Richard encouraged it. "She needs this, Barb," he'd said, his arm around my shoulders. "You're doing a good thing." I remember feeling proud that we could help her rebuild her life. God, the irony tastes like battery acid even now. The 3 of us worked together daily. Richard handled finances, contracts, and banking. Diane managed operations and staff. I focused on design, client acquisition, and the creative direction that had made us successful. We had 12 employees, a beautiful office in Old Town Scottsdale, and a project pipeline that stretched 18 months ahead. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. Successful family business, loving relationships, financial security, heading into our golden years. I'd started planning our 50th wedding anniversary party, thinking about a trip to Italy, maybe finally taking that cooking class in Tuscany I'd always wanted. I was planning celebrations while they were planning my destruction. While I was thinking about growing old together, they were calculating how much they could steal before I noticed. While I was trusting, they were transferring. And Marcus Chen, bless his nervous young heart, was about to blow their entire scheme wide open. Marcus set the folder on my kitchen table like it was evidence in a murder trial. His hands were shaking slightly, and he kept adjusting his glasses, a nervous habit I'd noticed during difficult conversations. "Mrs. Thornton, I've been reviewing our accounts for the quarterly tax preparation, and I found discrepancies." He opened the folder, revealing spreadsheets covered in highlighted sections and sticky notes. At first, I thought I'd made errors. I checked everything 3 times. Then I thought maybe it was vendor pricing changes or some legitimate expenses I didn't understand. But the more I dug, the worse it got. My heart started pounding, but I kept my voice steady. "Show me." He pulled out the first document. "This is from August 2013. There's a wire transfer for $18,000 to a vendor called Southwest Design Wholesale. The notation says it's for furniture for the Patterson project." He laid out another sheet. "But here's the Patterson project actual expense report. There's no Southwest Design Wholesale listed. The furniture came from our usual suppliers, and those costs are already accounted for." I stared at the papers. Could it be a duplicate payment? Maybe Richard. That's what I thought initially. Marcus was speaking faster now, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them in too long. "But look at this. Here's another one 2 months later. $22,000 to Arizona Luxury Imports for the Chen Residence project. But Mrs. Chen's actual invoices show different vendors entirely. And here, and here." He spread out page after page, each showing similar transfers to companies I didn't recognize, all supposedly for projects where the actual expenses were already documented. My mouth had gone dry. How many? Over 6 years, I've found 217 separate transfers so far. They average about $15,000 each, though some are as high as $45,000. They're spaced irregularly, sometimes 3 in a month, sometimes none for 6 weeks. The pattern is just random enough not to trigger automatic bank alerts. I did the math in my head and felt physically ill. That's over 3 million. $3.2 million to be exact. But Mrs. Thornton, there's more. Marcus pulled out another document, and something in his expression made my blood turn to ice water. These vendor companies? I looked them up. Southwest Design Wholesale was registered in Nevada in 2013. The owner is listed as... He paused, meeting my eyes. Diane Thornton Morrison. The world tilted slightly. My sister's name. My sister's company. Arizona Luxury Imports is registered to an R. Thompson, but the business address is a UPS store in Henderson, Nevada, and the phone number... He showed me his phone. It goes to a burner phone. But I cross-referenced the LLC filing date with Richard's calendar from that time period. He took a personal trip to Vegas that week, called it a commercial real estate conference. I couldn't speak, couldn't process. This had to be a mistake. Mrs. Thornton. Marcus's voice was gentle now. There are 8 different shell companies receiving these transfers. I've traced 4 definitively to Diane and found strong evidence linking the others to Richard. They've been careful, but not careful enough. And there's something else you need to know. He pulled out one final document, and this one made my hands start shaking. The document Marcus handed me was a bank statement for an account I'd never seen before. Royal Bank of Costa Rica. The account holder names made my vision blur. Richard Thornton and Diane Morrison. I found this by accident, Marcus explained quietly. Remember when Richard asked me to scan some documents for him last month? He left his email open on the office computer. This was in his drafts folder. He'd started an email to the bank but never sent it. I shouldn't have looked further, but after finding the discrepancies, I had to know. The statement showed deposits matching almost exactly the amount stolen from our business, minus what I assumed were transfer fees. The balance was $2,147,392, nearly $3 million. My money, our business's money, sitting in a Costa Rican bank account in both their names. There's more. Marcus scrolled through photos on his laptop. These are screenshots from Richard's cloud storage. I know this is invasive, Mrs. Thornton, and I'm sorry, but... He turned the screen toward me. Property listings. Luxury homes in Costa Rica. A stunning villa overlooking the Pacific Ocean with the notation, "Offer submitted" in Richard's handwriting. Email chains between Richard and Diane discussing retirement timelines, discussing the B situation. B for Barbara, I realized with a jolt of nausea. Messages about how much longer they needed to extract value before pulling the trigger. And then the photographs that shattered what remained of my denial. Richard and Diane together. Not as siblings-in-law at a family function. Together. His arm around her waist at a restaurant I didn't recognize. The two of them on a beach, kissing. Another of them, toasting with champagne on what looked like a hotel balcony. The metadata showed the dates, all within the past 2 years, all taken during times when Richard claimed he was at real estate conferences and Diane said she was visiting her daughter in California. When did this start? My voice sounded strange, distant. The affair? Based on the earliest romantic photos I found, approximately 3.5 years ago. The embezzlement started earlier, about 6 years ago, shortly after you made Diane operations manager and gave Richard full access to the business accounts for efficiency. Marcus said this last part carefully, watching my reaction. I remembered that conversation. 2013. The business was growing fast and I was overwhelmed with design work. Richard had suggested streamlining our financial management. "Trust me, Barb," he'd said. "I'll handle the money side. You focus on the creative side. That's what you're brilliant at." I'd been grateful. I'd actually been grateful that my husband was willing to take that burden off my shoulders. "Mrs. Thornton, there's one more thing." Marcus looked like he was about to cry. I found an email dated 3 weeks ago. Richard wrote to Diane about timeline acceleration. They're planning to leave next month, June 2019. There's a one-way flight booked for June 15th, 2 weeks from now. They're going to Costa Rica, and based on the email chain, they're not planning to come back. 2 weeks. They were going to disappear in 2 weeks with $3 million of my money, leaving me with a gutted business and a lifetime of questions. But here's what they didn't know about me. I don't fall apart. I get organized. Marcus, I said, my voice steady now, cold with purpose, I need you to make copies of everything, every document, every screenshot, every piece of evidence. Can you do that? He nodded. Good. Don't tell anyone about this conversation, not anyone. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. I spent that night alone in my study. Richard was supposedly at a dinner meeting with investors, staring at the evidence Marcus had compiled. Every page was another betrayal. Every transaction was another lie. Every photograph was another twist of the knife. But somewhere around midnight, something shifted inside me. The grief and shock began crystallizing into something else. Pure, focused rage. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold, calculating kind that builds empires and destroys enemies. They'd underestimated me. They'd assumed that because I was 72, because I focused on design rather than finance, because I'd trusted them, that I would be easy prey. They thought I'd be too old, too shocked, too broken to fight back effectively. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. The next morning, I called my attorney, Gerald Pressman. We'd worked together for 15 years on business contracts. Gerald, I need a referral for the best divorce attorney in Arizona. Someone ruthless. Someone who wins. There was a pause. Barbara, are you sure? I'm sure. I also need a business litigation specialist, someone experienced in embezzlement cases, and I need a forensic accountant, the best you know. Give me 2 hours. By lunchtime, I had 3 names. By end of business, I had appointments scheduled for the next day. I told Richard I was meeting with potential clients. He kissed my cheek and wished me luck. The divorce attorney Gerald recommended was Sylvia Chen. No relation to Marcus, but equally impressive. 50 years old, senior partner at one of Phoenix's most prestigious firms, with a reputation for absolutely destroying unfaithful spouses in court. Her office was all glass and steel, her handshake was firm, and her eyes were sharp as scalpels. Tell me everything, she said, pulling out a legal pad. I did. She took notes without interruption, her expression never changing. When I finished, she set down her pen and leaned back. Mrs. Thornton, I'm going to be direct with you. What you've described is not just adultery and betrayal, it's systematic fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. This is criminal territory. With the evidence you have, we can destroy them in divorce court, but we can also pursue criminal charges that could put them both in federal prison for a decade or more. I want both, I said. I want them in court and I want them in prison. She smiled for the first time. Then let's get to work. The forensic accountant, David Wu, was a numbers wizard who'd testified in high-profile white-collar crime cases. The business litigation specialist, Patricia Morrison, no relation to Diane's ex-husband, thankfully, had won millions in embezzlement settlements. Before you think this is moving too fast, let me stop here and ask you something. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how I made them pay for what they did, please hit that subscribe button. It helps me share these stories with more women who need to hear them. By the end of that week, I had a team assembled. David began his deep forensic audit. Patricia started building the civil case. Sylvia prepared the divorce filings and coordinated with federal prosecutors. And me? I went home every night, had dinner with my husband, and pretended everything was fine. For the next 10 days, I lived a double life. During the day, I was Barbara Thornton, successful designer, loving wife, trusting sister-in-law. I smiled at Richard over breakfast. I discussed project details with Diane at the office. I acted like absolutely nothing had changed. But every evening, I met with my team. And what they uncovered was even worse than I'd imagined. David Wu, the forensic accountant, traced the money through a labyrinth of shell companies and international transfers. They were sophisticated, he told me during one evening meeting. Not sophisticated enough, but more than your average embezzlers. They created fake vendor invoices that matched real project timelines. They even built websites for these fake companies, so if anyone checked, they'd appear legitimate. How did they get the money out without me noticing? Your husband had authorization to make transfers up to $50,000 without dual signatures. The checks and balances you thought were in place, he systematically dismantled them over the years, always with plausible reasons. Streamlining processes, reducing bottlenecks, improving efficiency. Each change seemed minor, but together they gave him complete control of the money flow. Patricia Morrison uncovered the personal side of the betrayal. She'd hired a private investigator who documented Richard and Diane's relationship extensively. They met twice a week at a condo in Tempe, paid for with my money, naturally. They'd taken 11 separate trips together over 3 years, always covered by fake business conferences or family visits. The investigator found something interesting, Patricia told me. Diane's daughter, Rebecca, she knows about the affair. She's been covering for her mother, providing alibis. You might want to prepare yourself. The betrayal may extend to your niece as well. That one hurt. I'd helped Rebecca through college, celebrated her wedding, held her babies. Another person I'd loved and trusted, another person willing to help destroy me. Sylvia Chen prepared the legal strategy. We're going to time this perfectly, she explained. They're planning to leave June 15th. We'll serve them June 14th, the day before their flight. We'll freeze all accounts immediately, business and personal. We'll file a restraining order keeping them from disposing of any assets. The federal prosecutor is ready with criminal charges the moment we give the word. I want to confront them first, I said. All 3 attorneys looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Mrs. Thornton, Sylvia began carefully, that's not advisable. If they know we're on to them, they might... I want to see their faces. My voice was steel. I want them to know that I know. I want them to understand exactly who they tried to destroy. I've earned that moment. There was a long silence. Finally, Sylvia nodded. All right, we'll arrange it. But it has to be completely controlled. My office, security present, everything recorded. And the moment that meeting ends, we serve papers, and the arrests happen immediately. Agreed? Agreed. We scheduled it for June 13th, a Thursday. I told Richard and Diane that our attorneys needed to discuss some contract updates and business structure changes. Nothing unusual, just a routine meeting. They suspected nothing. Richard even complained about the timing, saying it interfered with his golf game. My husband, planning to abandon me in 48 hours, complaining about missing golf. The night before the meeting, I didn't sleep. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. I kept imagining their faces when they realized their scheme had unraveled. I thought about all the nights I'd worked late while they were together, stealing my future. All the family dinners where they'd smiled at me while planning my destruction. All the times Richard had kissed me goodbye before meeting my sister. But I also did something practical. I wrote letters to my children. Michael, Jennifer, and Amy deserved to hear this from me, in my words, before it became public. I explained everything. The embezzlement, the affair, the evidence. I told them I loved them and that none of this was their fault. I also told them what I expected. Support. Not for their father, not for their aunt, but for me. For truth. For justice. I sealed the letters and gave them to Sylvia to deliver after the meeting. That morning I dressed carefully. A navy blue suit. Expensive, perfectly tailored, armor disguised as business attire. My grandmother's pearl earrings. Minimal makeup. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Where was the trusting wife? The generous sister? Gone. Replaced by someone harder, colder, but infinitely stronger. Richard came up behind me, adjusting his tie. "Big meeting today?" he asked casually. "Very big," I replied, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "Life-changing, actually." He laughed, kissed my cheek, completely oblivious. "Well, Good luck with the contracts. I'll see you at the office. At Sylvia's office, my team had prepared meticulously. The conference room was set up with cameras, visible ones for psychological impact. The documents were organized in pristine folders. Federal agents were in an adjacent room, ready to make arrests immediately after the confrontation. Everything was choreographed like a military operation. "They'll arrive at 2 o'clock, Sylvia told me. "We told them the meeting would start at 2:15 to give us time to position everything. Are you ready?" I nodded. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. Patricia handed me a bottle of water. "Remember, stay calm. Don't let them see how much they've hurt you. That's their power, and you're taking it back today." David gave me a folder. "If you want specific numbers to reference during the confrontation, they're all here. Dates, amounts, account numbers, all of it." At 1:58, I watched through the conference room window as Richard and Diane arrived together in his car. They were laughing about something. Diane touched his arm affectionately as they walked toward the building entrance. Even now, even in public during business hours, they couldn't help themselves. They took the elevator up, still chatting easily. Diane was wearing a dress I'd complimented her on last month. Richard had the golf tan he'd supposedly earned during solo weekends I'd encouraged him to take. "You work so hard," I'd told him. "You deserve time to relax." Time to relax. Time to plan my destruction. They walked into the reception area at exactly 2 o'clock. The receptionist directed them to the conference room. As they approached, Sylvia opened the door. "Richard, Diane, please come in. Barbara's waiting for you." The look of confusion on their faces, why was I already there, was the first taste of the satisfaction I'd been craving. It was delicious. They walked into the conference room wearing carefully constructed expressions of professional courtesy. Richard smiled at the attorneys. Diane adjusted her purse on her shoulder. Both of them radiated the confidence of people who believe they're about to win. "Barbara, honey," Richard said, moving to kiss my cheek. I stepped back. His smile faltered slightly. "What's going on? I thought this was about business contracts?" "Sit down," I said. Not a request, a command. Something in my voice made them both freeze. I watched the first flicker of uncertainty cross Diane's face. Richard's lawyer mask slipped on. I'd seen it 1,000 times during negotiations. He thought he could charm his way through whatever this was. "Perhaps someone should explain what's happening here," Richard said smoothly, settling into a chair. "These are some serious faces for a contract discussion." Sylvia Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Thornton, Ms. Morrison, I'm Sylvia Chen, and I represent Mrs. Thornton. This meeting is being recorded. You have the right to have attorneys present. Do you wish to call your lawyers before we proceed?" Now I saw real fear. Diane went pale. Richard's jaw tightened. "That won't be necessary," Richard said, but his voice had changed. "Barbara, what's this about?" I opened the first folder. My hands were steady, steadier than they'd been in 2 weeks. I slid a bank statement across the table. The Royal Bank of Costa Rica, their joint account, $2,947,392. "This," I said calmly, "is what this is about." The color drained from both their faces. "I don't," Diane started. "Don't lie." I cut her off, my voice sharp as broken glass. "We're past lies now. We're into consequences." I slid more documents across the table. Wire transfers, screenshots of their emails, photos of them together. Not business dinners, not family events, but intimate moments they thought were private. The beach kiss, the hotel balcony, his hand on her waist. 6 years, I said, looking at Richard. "You've been stealing from me for 6 years. 3 years of that, you've been sleeping with my sister." I turned to Diane. My sister. The person I gave a job to when she had nothing. The person I trusted with my business. "Barbara, you don't understand," Richard began. "I understand everything." I pulled out more papers. Southwest Design Wholesale, Arizona Luxury Imports, Desert Portfolio Management, 8 shell companies total, all registered to one or both of you, 3.2 million stolen through fake vendor invoices. And this, I threw down the property listing. Your villa in Costa Rica, the one you're flying to tomorrow. Or should I say, the one you were flying to tomorrow. Diane was crying now, mascara running down her face. Barb, please, let me explain. Explain what? Explain how you've been fucking my husband? Explain how you've been stealing my money? Explain how you were planning to disappear and leave me with nothing? My voice was rising now, the ice cracking. Explain which part, Diane, because I'm having trouble seeing what explanation makes any of this acceptable. Richard stood up. I'm leaving. This is harassment. 2 federal agents stepped into the room. Richard froze. Sit down, Mr. Thornton, one agent said. We're just getting started. Richard sank back into his chair, and for the first time since I'd met him in 1971, I saw him look genuinely afraid. Not nervous, not concerned, afraid. Mrs. Thornton has cooperated fully with a federal investigation into wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, the lead agent said. We have everything we need for criminal charges. This meeting is a courtesy, your last chance to explain yourselves before arrest. Arrest? Diane's voice was barely a whisper. Barb, you can't. We're family. Family. I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my ears. You keep using that word. I don't think you understand what it means anymore. David Wu, my forensic accountant, opened his laptop. Let me walk you through what we found. First transfer, August 12, 2013, $18,000 to Southwest Design Wholesale, supposedly for the Patterson project. But the Patterson invoices show furniture came from Henredin. So where did that $18,000 go? Silence. I'll tell you where it went. Into your Costa Rica account. Would you like me to continue? I have 217 more transactions documented. David's voice was clinical, detached. The pattern is sophisticated. Irregular timing to avoid detection. Amounts varied enough not to trigger bank alerts. Fake invoices matching real project timelines. Someone spent considerable time planning this. That would be me, Richard said quietly. The room went still. Richard, don't... Diane started. It's over, Diane. Look at them. They have everything. He turned to me, and I saw something in his eyes. Not remorse exactly, but resignation. Barbara, I'm not going to insult you by claiming this was some accident. You're right. We planned it. All of it. When? I asked. When did you decide I was disposable? He flinched at that. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain to me how stealing $3 million from your wife of 48 years was not deciding she was disposable. The business was doing so well, he said, as if this justified anything. You didn't need all that money. You thought you'd take it and I'd never notice. You thought you'd ruin me financially and emotionally, and that was fine because the business was successful? My voice was shaking now. I worked 16-hour days. Building that company. Every client, every design, every success was my work, and you took it. You stole my life's work to fund your affair and your retirement. Diane was sobbing openly now. I'm sorry, God, Barb, I'm so sorry. It just happened. Nothing just happens. I slammed my hand on the table. You made choices. Every fake invoice, every wire transfer, every time you touch my husband, those were choices. You both chose this. You chose to betray me. You chose to steal from me. You chose each other over everything we built together. So don't you dare tell me it just happened. Patricia Morrison pulled out another set of documents. The flight to Costa Rica was scheduled for tomorrow, June 15th. One-way tickets. You were never coming back, were you? Richard shook his head. Say it, I demanded. Say out loud what you were planning. He met my eyes. We were leaving. We were going to start over in Costa Rica with the money. My money. Your money. Sylvia Chen laid out the final documents. Here's what happens now. Federal charges for wire fraud and embezzlement will be filed within the hour. The evidence is overwhelming. Conviction is virtually certain. You're looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison, both of you. Diane made a sound like a wounded animal. Richard just stared at the table. The divorce papers will be served today, Sylvia continued. Given the circumstances, Mrs. Thornton will retain 100% of the business, the house, and all marital assets. The prenuptial agreement you signed, Mr. Thornton, specifically includes an infidelity clause and a fraud clause. You'll leave this marriage with nothing. Additionally, Patricia Morrison added, we're filing a civil suit for the full amount stolen plus damages. The Costa Rica account has been frozen by international cooperation with federal authorities. Every penny will be returned. I watched them absorb this, watch their future, the one they'd planned together, the villa by the ocean, the life they'd stolen from me, evaporate like water on hot pavement. I have one question, I said. Why? They looked at each other. Finally, Diane spoke. I was jealous. You always had everything. The successful business, the beautiful home, respect. I had nothing but failed marriages and bankruptcy. When Richard and I started working together, and he confided that you two had grown distant, that the marriage felt like a business partnership more than a romance. She trailed off. So you decided to destroy me instead of just leaving? I asked Richard. I told myself you wouldn't really be hurt, he said. The business was so successful. I thought you'd rebuild. He stopped. I don't know what I thought. I wanted out. I wanted something different. And I convinced myself that taking the money was somehow justified because I'd helped build the business too. You helped, I said softly. But you didn't build it. I did. And you destroyed it, or tried to. The federal agents moved forward. Richard Thornton, Diane Morrison, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit fraud. As they read the Miranda rights, as they handcuffed my husband and my sister, I felt something unexpected. Not triumph, but exhaustion, deep, bone-tired exhaustion. They were led out. The conference room emptied until it was just me and Sylvia. How do you feel? She asked. Empty, I admitted. I thought I'd feel victorious. Instead, I just feel done. That's normal. What you've been through, betrayal on this scale, it changes you. It did change me. Richard and Diane both pled guilty 6 months later to avoid trial. He got 12 years. She got 10. The money was returned. I sold the business. Couldn't look at it the same way anymore. My children rallied around me, especially once they understood the magnitude of the betrayal. I'm 73 now. I live in a smaller house, do consulting work, and spend time with my grandchildren. I'm not the same woman I was before that Tuesday morning when Marcus Chen sat in my kitchen with a manila folder. I'm harder now, less trusting, but also stronger than I ever imagined I could be. They thought I was too old to fight back. They learned better. And if you're watching this, thinking you're too old for anything, remember my story. You're never too old to demand justice, never too old to fight back.